the funding.
All right, moving on then. And more Thomas Pryor fan club kids cafe emails coming through. Simon in Ponsonby says, I totally agree. Thomas, I'm a father of 3 and I cannot abide feral children in cafes, restaurants or airplanes. It's all in the parenting. Okay. Another one, Sophie says, let these parents have a break. There are no 10-minute paid breaks when you're a full-time mum or dad. Sometimes kids do things, Thomas, and you can't control them. Most parents do their best. Thomas, my 5-month-old cries because that's one way he tells me what he needs. Sorry, not sorry, he's making a noise. While you have your latte, Thomas. I need to get coffee and I get very little sleep. So there you go. There's a message to you. Final story here. Extreme life coaching is all the rage. If you're bored and rich enough. That's the headline of a piece in The Guardian this week, looking to the latest luxury travel trend. As Awa Madawi puts it, quoting, anxious 1%ers are paying small fortunes to get dropped in the middle of the wilderness with a team of life coaches, unquote. It's all part of a wider well-being craze. If someone once was a yoga instructor, they are now a fitness coach or a career coach. Personal coaching is a multi-billion-dollar industry now, one of the fastest growing in the world. Of course, a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's no regulation, because anyone become a life coach, there's no degree. And with different prices, it's not just for billionaires and celebrities anymore. But as the writer puts it, if you can afford to hire a life coach, you're probably living a better life than most. So, around the panel, life coaches anybody?
Quite interesting, because I see it come up on my social media quite a lot. So there's lots of these people on Instagram and Facebook talking about how to live your best life and find that inner spark and all that stuff. I just want to know what is entailed in being dropped off in the middle of the wilderness with a team of life coaches who then guide you through it. I mean, that's just hysterically funny to me.
What about you, Thomas? I mean, from the outset, you look as if you're in desperate need of a life coach.
Thank you, Wallace.
And I mean that in the nicest way.
Yeah. It's like this is radio, not TV.
Have you had one?
No, I haven't had the pleasure of having a life coach yet. I too have seen the rise of them, and I often wonder what qualifies you to become a life coach. I've sort of fancied it myself, actually, of the advice I've been giving to parents today. I think I'd be quite good at it, actually. Might be a new avenue for me to explore. No, but I think it does hold true to the fact that often the more money you've got, the more sort of stupid and ridiculous ways you look to spend it, actually, and so look for some sort of terrible sense of, I don't know, longing. But yeah, no, it's not something that's really appealed to me at all.
Never in any well-being coach, or never?
I mean, I read stuff like David Goggins, who's referred to as the hardest man on the planet, and I listen to Tony Robbins, but in the capacity of not as a, I wouldn't employ them or pay them on a one-on-one basis. I wouldn't need that, but I do find what they have to say interesting about overcoming challenges and obstacles, or turning your mindset around to achieve more fulfillment in life, etc. But I'm not sure why you couldn't do that by just listening to what they have to say or reading their books, as opposed to paying someone exorbitant amounts of money to tell you that on a one-on-one basis.
Yeah, very interesting, isn't it? Wallace, we've had an electric car for 2 years, only had range anxiety the first week. Fantastic fun going on road trips around New Zealand. We can go 220 k's on one charge. You have both been fantastic. Gornas Basamtabar and Thomas Pryor, thank you very much for being with us. Thanks to Ali Ventura for putting the show together. I'm Wallace Chapman. See you tomorrow, 3:45 sharp.
Koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. On tonight's programme, a member of Parliamentary Services has been stood down over historic sexual assault allegations. Are there predators at Parliament? Should the police be investigating? And is it a safe place to work? At the Operation Burnham inquiry, journalist Nikki Hager launches a scathing attack on the Defence Force, accusing it of telling half-truths. A cycle and walkway planned for the Harbour Bridge is at least 3.5 years away, and the budget's already blown before it gets off the ground. Is a brand new Christchurch City office block an earthquake risk or not? And celebrity chef Jamie Oliver's restaurant group has gone down like a bad souffle.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, ko Susana Lea tawa tēnei. A parliamentary service staffer has been stood down following an allegation of sexual assault some years ago. The Speaker, Trevor Mallard, says a female staff member came forward following his interview with RNZ, in which he said he believed there was a rapist on the premises. Here's our political editor, Jane Patterson.
Trevor Mallard says it's not his role to refer the complaint to the police, that's for the woman to do. The Debbie Francis inquiry into bullying at Parliament revealed 3 allegations of sexual assault described as extremely serious. Parliamentary Service says the complaint had previously been investigated and that investigation was reopened after the woman came forward today. It says the original investigation was not into allegations of rape. Mr Mallard says he understands the 3 incidents highlighted in the report were all about the same man, who's now been stood down. From Parliament, Jane Patterson.
A woman who campaigned for tougher earthquake regulations says she is alarmed at the revelations about a new building in Christchurch. 3 engineering companies have criticised the decision of an office block on High Street, which is newly completed but unoccupied and may be seismically unsound. University of Canterbury lecturer Anne Brower says the issues at 230 High Street call into question the council's procedures for looking at new buildings. Ms Brower says building and safety should be of utmost importance.
Especially given how much it costs to build a big building. You know, we're going to be stuck with this for a long time, and we've really got to do it right. So it's incumbent on City Council and the MB to do their job.
University of Canterbury lecturer Anne Brower. Journalist Nikki Hager has asked the Operation Burnham inquiry to get from the Defence Force the names of all those it knows were killed or wounded in a New Zealand-led raid in Afghanistan in 2010. The inquiry is investigating allegations that 6 civilians were killed in the raid and the military covered up what happened. Mr Hager made a presentation at the inquiry's public hearing in Wellington today, saying the book Hit and Run, which he wrote with John Stevenson, made it clear the civilian casualties were accidental. But he said regardless of that, there were 3 things the SAS were responsible for in the raid.
Any carelessness in the orders given to the attack aircraft. 2, not going back to give medical assistance and aid, which was a standard thing for soldiers in their position to do. And 3, hiding and denying what they had done.
Nikki Hager said there is a gulf between what the Defence Force does and what it chooses to tell the public and Parliament. The family of a mental health patient who took his own life while in care says the Prime Minister now has a better understanding of the issues facing families with mental health problems. 21-year-old Nicky Stevens was found dead in the Waikato River 3 days after he walked out of Waikato Hospital's mental health unit in 2015. The Waikato District Health Board is disputing a coroner's ruling that he died from preventable suicide, and the family met with Jacinda Ardern today. Nicky's mother, Jane Stevens, says once her family can achieve some sort of closure, they can focus on helping other families affected by mental health problems.
The government need to understand the horror of what is happening for families like ours. And, you know, we are just one example of many where all the processes are stacked against us, where there's no support.
Jane Stevens. The family meets with the new DHB Commissioner, Karen Poltasi, tomorrow. The Retirement Commissioner, Diane Maxwell, has been cleared of bullying allegations and will return to work tomorrow. She was put on leave in December after the government asked the State Services Commission to investigate claims of bullying and mismanagement. Ms Maxwell's contract ends at the end of June and will not be renewed. A shared walking and cycle path across the Auckland Harbour Bridge could be finished in 4 years. The Transport Agency has unveiled early designs of a $100 million plus walking and cycling path, which will attach to the bridge piers rather than clipping onto existing lanes. It'll be 5 metres wide with viewing platforms and will sit at the same level as vehicles. A spokesperson, Brett Glidden, says they will get into detailed designs later this year and hope to use an earlier resource consent application to speed the process up.
Look, we want to push on with this as quickly as possible. All going well, we would love to start construction at the end of next year, but there's obviously quite a few more steps to go, and then it's probably a two-year construction period. We are committed to this, and we're going to push it as hard as we can to deliver it as quickly as we can.
Brett Glidden from the Transport Agency. It's 5:05. The All Blacks flanker Sam Cane is back in the Chiefs' starting lineup for their match against the Queensland Reds in Hamilton on Saturday night. Cane returned to the field 7 months after breaking his neck when he came on off the bench and the Chiefs lost to the Blues last weekend. The Chiefs, though, are still without All Black lock Brodie Retallick. Retallick suffered a hand injury a month ago and his recovery has taken longer than expected. The Southern Steel and the Northern Stars will close out the regular netball premiership season in an elimination final preview in Invercargill tonight. Although both sides are already guaranteed a spot in the final series, tonight's match is far from a dead rubber, as netball reporter Ravinda Hunia explains.
The reigning champions Steel have hit their best form at the right end of the season and can extend their unbeaten run to 7 games with a win over the Stars in a semi-final preview in Invercargill tonight. However, the Stars will be wanting to show that their round 1 66-64 win over the Steel wasn't a fluke and prove why they're a real threat to the Steel's attempt at a championship three-peat when they meet again next week. But motivation doesn't stop there, with Silver Fern selectors in town to announce the national squad at the same venue tomorrow. You can guarantee players will be pulling out all the stops to leave a lasting final impression in their minds. Pass-off from Stadium Southland is at 7:40pm. Ko Ravinda Hunia tēnei.
The Toronto Raptors have levelled their NBA Basketball Eastern Conference Series final at 2 games all after a 120-102 win in Game 4. That's the news.
The first steps into Pike.
There were tears and cheers, but it is it's a first small step, but very, very significant, particularly for the families.
The Crusaders boss defends his team.
I didn't hear anything that was compelling to make me disbelieve what the players had said.
And a scathing report on culture at Parliament.
So people have been raped in Parliament?
That is the impression I get from the report, yes.
Hard questions answered. Morning Report with Corin Dan and Susie Ferguson, weekdays from 6.
Then on 9 to noon, is methyl bromide use back on the table for treating log exports? And after 10, American author Meredith May on how she was saved by honeybees. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. Northland to Waitomo, including Taupo and Bay of Plenty. Cloudy periods and a few light showers in western areas. Showers clearing tomorrow and fine spells increasing. Taranaki to Kapiti Coast, including Taihape and Taumaranui. Patchy drizzle clearing south of Whanganui today. Mostly cloudy tomorrow and a few showers developing. For Gisborne, Hawke's Bay, Wairarapa, Wellington, Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury. Fine weather, apart from a possible shower or two in Tararua district tomorrow. Bulla, cloud increasing and showers developing tonight, clearing by tomorrow. Westland, often cloudy with a few showers turning to rain, then clearing tonight. Fiordland, cloudy with showers, mainly in the west and south. Otago and Southland, occasional showers in Southland and Clutha, mainly about the south coast. Cloudy periods elsewhere. Chatham Islands, fine spells and a few showers. RNZ National with Indira Stewart is back with First Up from 5am tomorrow. It's 8 minutes past 5.
Thanks, Susanna. This is Checkpoint and I'm Lisa Owen. A parliamentary staffer has been stood down after another staff member came forward and laid a formal complaint of sexual assault. The Speaker, Trevor Mallard, this morning said he believed 3 cases of extremely serious sexual assaults cited in a report into Parliament's workplace culture were rape. The damning independent report revealed rampant bullying, bad behaviour and sexual assaults in the corridors of power. Our political editor, Jane Patterson, filed this report on how today unfolded.
This morning, the Speaker said it was his impression from the report that the assaults constituted rape, and he had the sense the man is still on the premises. Mr Mallard said he didn't know if it was an MP or a staffer, but if he did know who it was, he'd go to the police. The fallout from the report has seen party leaders coming and going to the Speaker's office, which has been a hive of activity today. National's Deputy Leader Paula Bennett told reporters this was an extremely serious situation, and the Speaker should involve the police immediately.
There are people here that are feeling unsafe at the moment. I personally am dealing with staff that are feeling very vulnerable and upset and describe themselves as feeling ill and uncomfortable and nervous.
Paula Bennett acknowledges people came forward because they were promised anonymity and she respects their continued right to privacy. But she says she also has concerns for the welfare of people working there if they feel there's a known rapist walking the halls of Parliament. She says the duty of care is with the Speaker, but also extends to the report's author Debbie Francis if she holds information that would give any clue as to who that person is.
For me, it almost feels like they are harbouring a criminal. If they know who it is, I feel they have a responsibility on behalf of us all.
She's advising women at Parliament not to walk around alone if they're feeling unsafe. But Ms Bennett says it's the Speaker's job to make sure everyone does feel safe.
We have a responsibility to providing a safe workplace, and I don't think I can stand here confidently and say that's happening right now. And the Speaker has a responsibility to make sure that's happening.
The Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, met with the Speaker this morning and says Trevor Mallard gave her an assurance he's taking steps to ensure Parliament is a safe place to work.
At that point, I suggested that a meeting with all party leaders would be one way for him to communicate what he was doing, what steps he was actively taking to ensure the security of Parliament. That happened at 12:45 this afternoon. At that meeting again, we were all given assurances by the Speaker that he was taking appropriate steps to make sure that this is a safe place for people to work.
Ms Ardern was asked what she thought of Paula Bennett's call to involve the police.
All of the advice over the years that I've had from people who are experts who have worked with victims is that we need to first ensure that victims have all the support they need, but that everything actually needs to be decided by them. So the choice of reporting to the police is ultimately for them. Then, though, the responsibility, regardless of their decision upon us, is to make sure that this is a safe working environment.
Mid-afternoon, Mr Mallard fronted to the media.
A member of the Parliamentary Service staff has been stood down following a historic allegation of assault. I don't want to cut across any employment or possible police investigations, but I am satisfied that the Parliamentary Service has removed a threat to the safety of women working in the parliamentary complex.
He thanked the staff member who came forward.
This is obviously a very traumatic time for that individual, and will also be the case for other individuals, other women who are involved.
He appealed to the media to let the process run its course, and he says it's not his role to refer this complaint to the police.
It is the role of the woman involved. It is part of the ethics of New Zealand that you don't refer these matters to the police unless the individual wants to. That is a decision for her. Obviously, I would prefer if she did, but I will not be pressuring her.
Mr Mallard says it's his understanding the same person was responsible for all 3 serious cases of sexual assault highlighted by Debbie Francis. But he says he'll be making no further comment as the matter's now under investigation. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Jane Patterson.
So we heard from Nationals Deputy Leader Paula Bennett and Jane's story there and her concerns this morning. Just before we came to air, I spoke to Ms Bennett and asked her if she feels safer now a parliamentary staffer has been stood down.
I do feel better for the staff around here. I'm hoping that there is some relief for them, that they don't think that potentially... I just think that the Speaker's language this morning was reckless and inflammatory and has caused so much concern around here. There has been genuine staff that think that there is a repeat rapist working amongst them whom they don't know, and so either that is absolute and the Speaker knows that, in which case, in my opinion, police should have been involved to investigate. That does not mean that they are outing victims that don't want to be named, but an investigation started does not necessarily need victims coming forward.
But wasn't he hamstrung by that commitment, though? The commitment for anonymity. Isn't he hamstrung by that to a certain degree?
I would have thought if you had a pattern of behaviour that has come through, and he was telling us that it was more than 3, that surely that would be enough that you would go to police for them to at least look at an investigation. That doesn't mean it might lead to prosecution, but at least it means some questions might have been asked. but to actually, and remember, these women were interviewed weeks, even possibly months ago. So for some of the staff and others here, it is extremely terrifying to think that they have a known, in his words, rapist working amongst them, and they felt so unsafe. And I think that future victims need to be considered as well.
So would you have gone to the police?
Yes.
Did you make any calls to the police today?
No, I didn't. I didn't know enough. I felt, obviously I could only go by the media reports in the Francis Review, so I went and saw the Speaker, spoke quite passionately to him about it. But, I mean, they knew the name of the alleged perpetrator, not me, so I could hardly say I think there might be someone at Parliament who was, because the Speaker said it in the media.
So do you now know who this person is, and do you know who the complainant is? Have you talked to any of the people directly involved?
No, I don't.
Just on the subject of going straight to the police when you see a pattern of behaviour, more than 3 women, serious complaints.
Well, he says rape.
Yeah, he said rape, but the report says sexual assaults, doesn't it? So even at a level of sexual assault, where there is a pattern, you would go to the police. Or harassment. A serious sexual assault, they said, yeah. Yeah. So I'm wondering why in your own party, you chose to keep allegations of harassment within your own party a secret, if that's the position you're now taking now.
We saw nothing like this, Lisa. We saw nothing like this. Absolutely nothing like this. And to be fair, when we saw a pattern of inappropriate behaviour, we confronted those allegations to the perpetrator and went straight to them. So I have absolutely no qualms in how I handled. We've got someone that's known who a perpetrator might have been working amongst us at the level of rape and hasn't confronted them or gone to police.
So it's a matter of degree, is that what you're saying?
I don't think there's circumstances that are similar, and I have absolute confidence, and I know that I handled what I've had to handle in the past, which is why today has been so distressing for people that have felt re-traumatised, that have felt scared, and having to work with them with I just think that words that have been thrown out there, either it is rape, and if it's that serious, something needed to be done sooner to ensure the safety of people working around that alleged perpetrator, or it's not that serious, and then we've got real issues, because I think that's caused a real level of unrest and uncertainty.
And I do understand your position on this, but I want to go back to your party and the handling of accusations of harassment, because I'm wondering, in the context of this report, it talks about a culture of silence. Do you think that you and others within your party have added to a culture of silence?
The day I knew about more than one complaint, I took it directly to the person and took action.
Did you go to the police at all during that time?
There is absolutely no way that I have not done enough. I have never had an allegation of rape or anything of that serious nature. I have handled it at the level it should be, while also protecting all victims, which I will do with every inch of what I've got, even if it takes criticism from the media.
Right, so, but you didn't, no one within the party called the police about this. I just want to be clear on that point.
It wasn't at that level, Lisa.
Okay, so it is about...
I will put victims first.
So it is about degrees.
A crime had not been committed.
Right.
A crime has been committed if the Speaker's words are true.
So
actually one of the most serious crimes I think that you can, apart from murder.
The report lists, I think it was 14 allegations of sexual assault, right? And 11 were against people who are still employed in and around Parliament. One person has been stood down here. Are you convinced that there aren't still predators in your midst?
Well, I can't be. I'm not the one that was listening to it. I don't know who's working here. I don't know who's involved. I just know that we have done everything we can to ensure the safety of our staff, to ensure that they can come forward and talk to us. I don't know the degrees of what the Francis Review have gone out, just would have read like you have, but like any workplace, and particularly one this big, I think we're dealing with some pretty awful issues that we have to take really seriously.
One other thing just before you go, we spoke to Barbara Kurigi last night, and I asked her if she recognised any of the behaviours in this report. Did you recognise any of the behaviours contained in the report?
I think I've certainly seen, perhaps, apart from the obvious in the last 12 months, before that I probably have seen people when they're tired at the end of their tether, sometimes in the way they speak to staff or that sort of thing. I don't think I've always seen the best behaviour from everybody all of the time. I kind of agree with the report that it's a very small number of people, and I would argue that most are pretty outstanding and amazing, but I probably have seen some of it that has made me comment before.
If you are completely honest with yourself, is any of this behaviour present in your party? Not that I see now, no. And you're convinced of that? As convinced as I can be. As I say, this is long hours, but there's no excuses. These people in places that work pretty quickly. I'm not sure everybody is perfect all of the time, but I think that they check their behaviour better than they ever have. And that's National's Deputy Leader Paula Bennett there. If this story has raised any issues of concern or distress for anyone listening, you can call or text 1737 on the text anytime to speak to a trained counsellor for any reason, or call Safe to Talk on 0800 044 334 for urgent help. That number again, 0800 044 334. And if it's an emergency and you feel that you or someone else is at risk, call the police, 111. It is 21 minutes after 5 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. We're keen to know what you think about what's been going on in Parliament and how it's being handled. You can text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or send us an email, checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. A protest on the Auckland Harbour Bridge has been called off after new plans for the cycle and walkway revealed a bigger project and a budget blowout. The Transport Agency this morning released plans for its preferred option for a shared 5-metre wide path adjacent to the lanes of traffic. Protesters had planned on marching over the bridge this weekend to highlight the lack of progress, but now the warring parties have decided to get over it and build a bridge. Alex Perrottet reports.
The Transport Agency are philosophically opposed to providing walking and cycling access across this bridge.
10 years ago, this crowd took to the Harbour Bridge on foot and bike. The police finally giving them safe passage for their protest. Last year, the government pledged to fund the shared cycle and walkway to the tune of $67 million, and Skypath Trust thought it was in the box seat to deliver its design. Auckland Council had already given resource consent back in 2015. But the Trust's Bevan Woodward says it all went sour last year when NZTA went quiet.
6 months ago since we had any meeting with NZTA, 6 months since we've spoken to them.
An independent investigation by law firm Simpson Grierson, released today, says the NZTA and Skypath never had a contractual relationship, and that Bevan Woodward's expectation that Skypath would be engaged to design and build it were unfounded.
The investigation had very narrow terms of reference, and so we knew that it would be effectively a whitewash. What is good about the investigation is they recognised the communication was unacceptable.
The NZTA's Brett Glidden admitted the agency could have worked better with Skypath.
The Simpson and Grierson report's there for people to read. There's some lessons in there around how we've communicated with them. We'll take on those lessons, but it shows we acted in good faith.
Today, the NZTA released this new design, which Brett Glidden says is bigger and better.
The Auckland Harbour Bridge is a very important asset to New Zealand. It's probably our most strategic asset. It takes a lot of traffic, a lot of services. It's really important that we protect that asset. We can't make that asset vulnerable in any way. So we have to take that into account no matter what we do. So we've been committed to walking and cycling, but we've got to have an option that we see is enduring and ensures that we maintain the integrity of the Auckland Harbour Bridge, and that's what we believe we've delivered with this option.
Now, the design of the new Skypath means that it won't be clipped on the side. It'll actually be attached to the piers. That means it can be wider, 5 metres wide. It'll have room for cyclists as well as pedestrians, as well as people who just want to stop and take in the view. It'll connect the North Shore Sea Path right down here to West Haven. Now, Skypath says it's still keen to work with the NZTA. However, the old design that's been scrapped costs $69 million. This new design will cost upwards of $100 million. Skypath says it also just wants to get the job done. It's happy to work with the NZTA, but the earliest the NZTA says it can be delivered is 3.5 years. So we asked a few joggers and cyclists what they made of the idea, as well as the fact that the time frame and costs are running away.
I'll run with you. The Sky Path is going to go up right next to the Harbour Bridge. Are you happy with that idea?
Sure, why not? Yeah.
It's going to be 3.5 years though. Can you wait that long?
Oh, it's going to take ages, isn't it? Yeah.
I don't think many people will use it. I'm assuming it'll end up like the cycle paths where no bugger will use them.
100% pro. I live on the shore, I work in the city. If I could cycle around to work, it'd be awesome.
Sky Path across the Harbour Bridge. Would you take it? Would you walk on it?
Yes.
Yes. Would you pay $100 million for it though?
Probably not.
Yeah, my mother lives on the shore, a few of our old mates on the shore, I'd use it all the time. Try to get a car off the road. Yeah.
Nah, not for me, eh? Yeah, not excited about it. They're going to spend $100 million too.
Sounds a bit expensive.
Yeah, okay.
Not only will the project cost more, Bevan Woodward still wants his money. He says he's $1.6 million out of pocket for all his work, developing plans that the Transport Agency is no longer using. After today's meeting, he's more confident he'll get something. Brett Glidden says he'll try to save money and time by using the existing consent and wants to start work early next year. The government has a $390 million walking and cycling package in the land transport program, but couldn't commit today to funding the $32 million gap. Associate Transport Minister Julianne Genter's office says the project is a priority, but she'll wait and see the business case as it progresses. Others seem equally resigned to the wait-and-see approach.
So when are they going to start building it?
They reckon the earliest they'll deliver it is 3.5 years.
Oh, yeah.
Can you wait that long?
Yeah, maybe.
And that was Alex Perrottet reporting there. And if you were listening rather than watching, you really do need to go online and watch Alex running in his work clothes after joggers there. The Christchurch City Council is insisting a building found to have serious seismic flaws poses no immediate risk to the public. But the future of the new High Street block remains unclear after 3 engineering companies raised serious concerns with how it was built. The revelations have seen the council come under fire from the building's real estate agent and reignited wider questions about engineering qualifications and processes. Katie Todd reports.
On High Street today, people are cycling and walking underneath number 230. Perhaps unaware of the serious risks that 3 engineering companies have now identified with the 7-storey office block. Auckland first raised the issues with the City Council in late 2017. A report leaked to RNZ shows the council then took 9 months to get a peer review by Holmes Consulting that confirmed Auckland's fears. The Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment then commissioned a report by engineering firm Becker. That report, also leaked to RNZ, states the building's piles are 10 times too weak. One support column is overloaded by 5 times, and there are issues with the steel frame and foundation. The report also said calculations underestimated the earthquake loading by 25%. University of Canterbury lecturer Anne Brower advocated for more stringent regulation of earthquake-prone buildings after falling masonry crushed the bus she was inside in the February 22, 2011 earthquake. She says the issues with the High Street building, designed by engineer Ju Hyun Cho of Seismotech Consulting, call into question the council's procedures for assessing new builds.
It costs a lot of money to build a building, and one would hope that we build buildings to last. So it's really important to get it right before the building is built. And it sounds like there were warnings issued before the building was completed that there were problems, and it's hard to conceive of why those warnings weren't heeded.
Chris Harding of JLL was the real estate agent when the building went on the market last July. He says neither the developer or City Council told him they were dealing with serious seismic concerns, a move he describes as unprofessional and against real estate authority rules. In a statement this afternoon, the council's General Manager Consenting and Compliance, Leonie Ray, denied that 230 High Street poses any immediate risk.
While the concerns regarding the building's level of compliance with the current building code have been acknowledged, we do not see this, nor has any suggestion been made, that the building poses any immediate risk to the public or is even dangerous in the normal course of events. This is seen as no different to a number of buildings throughout the city which do not meet the current building code compliance level due to their age or construction, as there is throughout other cities in the country.
Engineering New Zealand says it has not received any complaints about the building's designer, Ju Hyun Cho, and it needs more information about the case. Chief Executive Susan Freeman-Green says the organisation is currently pushing to introduce higher qualifications for some engineers.
We think that for certain types of safety critical engineering work, there needs to be a licence that has additional criteria satisfied so that everyone has assurance that engineers can carry out the particular type of work.
Meanwhile, neighbouring business owners are grappling with the potential implications if council does not grant the building a final building code of compliance certificate. Jonathan Moran owns the clothing store Infinite Definite, which was one of the first businesses established on High Street post-earthquake, and is 2 doors down from 230. He says it had been pretty obvious that things weren't going smoothly at 230 High Street, and it's disappointing to hear its future is not clear. But he is trying to look on the bright side.
We're building a whole new city from scratch, so it's unrealistic to think there's not going to be construction or deconstruction or different things. That's just part of what we're operating within, and I guess it's not positive to see things coming down, I guess, but at the same time, construction is just part of what the CBD's DNA is going to be for a while, and you can't get hung up on that.
Aurecon did not respond to RNZ's requests for comment, while Becker and Holmes Consulting said they were bound by confidentiality, while MB assesses the case. MB is now considering Becker's report before issuing a final ruling or determination. After then, it will be up to the council to decide if it will give the building a formal tick of approval. In Christchurch, for Checkpoint, Katie Todd.
Coming up on Checkpoint on RNZ National, we're at the day of public hearings at the Burnham inquiry. Jamie Oliver's restaurant chain has flopped, leaving a bad taste in workers' mouths. And we'll have rather a serious story about cats getting the snip. We would love your feedback. Do get in touch, 2101 on the text. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or send us an email, checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. It is time now, though, for the headlines with Susanna.
A parliamentary service staffer has been stood down this afternoon over an allegation of sexual assault some years ago. The Speaker, Trevor Mallard, says a female staff member came forward following his interview with RNZ, in which he said he believed there was a rapist on the premises. Parliamentary Services says the original investigation was not into allegations of rape. Journalist Nikki Hager has asked the Operation Burnham inquiry to order the Defence Force to name all those it knows were killed or wounded in a raid in Afghanistan in 2010. Allegations that 6 civilians were killed in the New Zealand-led raid and the military covered it up are being investigated by the inquiry. At the inquiry's public hearing in Wellington today, Mr Hager said the book he co-wrote with John Stevenson, Hit and Run, was clear that the deaths were accidental, but he said the SAS were responsible for several lapses, such as not going back to give medical aid and hiding and denying what they'd done. Christchurch City Council says it does not see any risk in the earthquake design of a new building that's alarmed some engineers. The council says there is no immediate risk to the public from the 7-storey office block, which is unoccupied. 3 engineering reviews have pointed to the High Street building having weak piles, frame, foundations and a column. But the council says the design was reviewed by 2 chartered professional engineers before it was consented. The police have charged a man with murder after a shooting in South Auckland last week. Fa'aifo Siausi, also known as Joe, died in Piako Street in Otara last Friday afternoon. The police say a 21-year-old man has been charged with murder and will appear in the Manukau District Court tomorrow. A second 21-year-old male faces a firearms charge and has already appeared in court. Retirement Commissioner Diane Maxwell has been cleared of bullying allegations and will return to work tomorrow. She was put on leave in December while the State Services Commission investigated claims of bullying and mismanagement. Ms Maxwell's contract ends next month and will not be renewed. Those are the latest headlines with RNZ National. Our next news and weather update is at 6.
Thank you, Susanna. This is Checkpoint and I'm Lisa Owen. It's time now for business news with Madison Reedy. Hi, Maddie. Sky City. So they're going into online gambling. What's the plan here? Because they can't actually do it in New Zealand, can they?
No, they cannot do it here. So they're doing it out of Malta. So they've teamed up with a Scandinavian company and they're going to create this online gambling website. It's going to be based out of Malta. It's obviously, because it's overseas, going to have the URL ending in .com rather than .co.nz. Now, they obviously can't do it here. Online gambling is illegal in New Zealand, bar the TAB and Lotto. We did know that Sky City was keen on doing this. They've said that they want to get into the online gambling space for a while, but obviously they've been trying to figure out how and obviously where they can and can't do that. And the reason that they wanted to get into the online gambling space is because they're actually losing money to overseas-based online gambling websites anyway. They reckon that they're losing about $160 million a year to these overseas-based websites, so it's created a bit of a hole in its earnings. They hope that this new plan will plug a bit of that gap, but they don't actually expect to make much money from it. This isn't necessarily a big money-making scheme. It's more of a learning and education path for them. They obviously want to see it regulated here. They said that they're happy to work with the government on that, but this is basically them dipping their toes in the online space to figure out how to do it and how to do it well. They will pay goods and services tax on the earnings from this. Overseas-based online gambling websites don't pay that tax in New Zealand, and they said they're also going to comply with the host responsibility rules that apply to casino operators in New Zealand.
That's interesting, isn't it? Okay, the Reserve Bank has reviewed the LVR restrictions, but they're not doing anything with them?
They're going to keep them. So the loan-to-value ratios essentially restrict banks from borrowing too much to essentially first-home buyers, typically who have small deposits. So that's typically deposits below 20%. Now, basically, it means that they'll face less risk if the economy ever sours. Now, these were introduced by the Reserve Bank back in 2013, seems like forever ago now. And at the moment, banks can only lend 15% of their loan book to owner-occupiers with those small deposits and about 5% to property investors as well. Now, these were eased in 2017 by the Reserve Bank, so they have softened these around the edges a bit. They have been tweaking with these while they've had them in play. But they've obviously been in place for 5 years now, so the Reserve Bank thought, hey, it's been about half a decade, let's have a look at them and see how they're going and, well, ultimately, if we should keep them. They found out that while they have faced a couple of hurdles and some unintended consequences on the way, including actually unintentionally restricting first home buyers from the market when they first began, they've decided that they have been working pretty well and as intended, so they've decided they're going to keep this tool in their toolkit for a little bit longer. Some of the hurdles that they are also mentioned there was that when they focused particularly on Auckland in 2015, they slightly tweaked it there to restrict Auckland particularly. They saw that actually spilled house price growth into other regions of the country.
Because people went shopping elsewhere.
Of course they did, because it was cheaper to do so. But they do say that the LVR policy has been successful in working to alleviate excessive house price inflation and also excessive household credit growth as well. So ultimately they're keeping it, and they've made that decision because they don't want to have to use for a very big, complex term, macro-prudential tools. This will disappoint some, though, because obviously when they introduced this in 2013, it was temporary. Now that obviously has a big question mark over it, whether it is temporary or not, whether they will scrap it in the future or just keep it and keep easing it and tweaking with it. In fact, Century 21, the real estate firm, yesterday actually came out and said that they want to see a review of LVRs, which the Reserve Bank has done, but they ultimately wanted them scrapped. And they say that's because some first-home buyers, particularly in Auckland, are being further pushed away from the property ladder.
Because they can't get the deposits together.
Because of
large deposits.
Exactly, because when you have a house in New Zealand that's an average of $1 million, that 20% deposit is about $200,000. So they're saying that's just unfeasible for many young people in New Zealand. Now, obviously, the Reserve Bank has made this decision to keep LVRs with the backdrop of their capital review. We obviously keep talking about this. I keep bringing it up. The Reserve Bank wants banks to hold significantly more capital. That that, along with LVRs, are just one of the tools in their toolkit to try and keep the banking system and the economy ultimately in check.
Hey, what else has been going on today? Marcus, should we do a quick whip around?
Yeah, let's do a whip around. The NZX Top 50 index closed up 0.2%. That's a rise of 21 points to close at 10,237 tonight. The New Zealand dollar, that's buying at just under 65 US cents, just hanging on there. 94.5 to the Australian and about 51.1 British pence.
Thanks, Maddie. Madison Reedy there with Business News. Up to 1,000 workers have been told they no longer have jobs after British celebrity chef Jamie Oliver's UK restaurant group was placed in receivership. The group includes Jamie's Italian chain, Barbacoa and 15, and all but 3 of his 25 restaurants have been closed. Here's the BBC's Emma Simpson.
So what you get...
From the cheeky new chef on the block to campaigner, TV star and books, Jamie Oliver's built an empire as Britain's most successful chef, and he opened dozens of restaurants too.
Come in and see us at James Italian.
Nothing was being served up today, though. His restaurant business collapsed. 22 outlets closed with immediate effect. Around 1,000 jobs lost. In a statement, Jamie Oliver said, "I'm devastated that our much-loved UK restaurants have gone into administration. I'm deeply saddened by this outcome and would like to thank all of the people who've put their hearts and souls into this business over the years." So what went wrong?
It's just got a bit too chainy.
Yeah.
Whereas just around here there's some really quirky little restaurants and just one-offs that you could go to.
Not really the kind of place that stands out to me as somewhere I'd want to spend my money. There's just so many other great places around, just so much competition.
Today's news isn't a total surprise. This chain almost went bust a couple of years ago. Jamie Oliver put in £13 million of his own money to save it. 12 outlets already closed last year in a restructuring plan, but it's clear that turnaround hasn't worked. It's been tough for lots of other casual dining chains too. Prezzo, Byron, Carluccio's, just some of the brands who've had to close outlets, counting the cost of over-expansion.
Mid-market restaurants are being squeezed at both ends, and they're finding it quite hard to make money at this time. If they're not offering exactly what consumers want, then they find that they can't make money because the costs of wages, the costs of business rates and the cost of running promotions to get people through the door are simply too much. We're going to fry that off.
His other businesses may be thriving, but it seems Jamie Oliver's restaurants weren't able to keep up with changing tastes in what's become an increasingly crowded market.
Emma Simpson reporting from London. The journalist Nikki Hager has accused the Defence Force of not telling the full truth about its operations in Afghanistan and Iraq in a scathing attack during his presentation to the Operation Burnham inquiry. The inquiry, which is investigating allegations that 6 civilians were killed in Afghanistan during a New Zealand-led raid in 2010 and the military covered up what happened, held a public hearing in Wellington today. Anne-Marie May was there.
Nikki Hager told the inquiry there is a gulf between what the New Zealand Defence Force does and what it chooses to tell the public and Parliament. He referred to its Special Inquiry Office set up to handle its involvement in the Operation Burnham inquiry, which included employment of a strategic liaison advisor to gather, analyse and synthesise information from a range of sources into a cohesive word picture. Mr Hager said since he and John Stevenson wrote their book Hit and Run about the incident the inquiry's now considering, the Defence Force has seemed determined to not admit that its staff killed and injured innocent people, including an unnamed Afghan civilian.
Here was an unarmed man on his own, accidentally wandering close to a group of heavily armed SAS troopers in full body armour and with night vision equipment. And the SAS commander assessed him such a risk to them that they had to kill him on the spot.
Nikki Hager told the inquiry there was nothing justified or legal about that, and many New Zealand SAS members would not have behaved in that way.
Did the SAS cause his death? Of course they did. They shot him. The trick was that they hid the wrongness of this act by making up that he was armed, and by that little act of cohesive word picture, hid the fact that he was a civilian villager.
Nikki Hager said in successive reports after the Operation Burnham attack, the civilians gradually dropped from the lists of those wounded or killed, and nearly everyone left was referred to as an insurgent. He asked the inquiry to order the Defence Force to release information including the names of all the people it knows were killed or wounded in the raid, where and when they were shot, and what grounds it had for believing they were insurgents. Earlier in the day, a witness whose name and identifying details were suppressed gave evidence to the inquiry about the effects the war has had on the people of Afghanistan, saying it had left them living constantly in survival mode. Their words have been revoiced.
Waking up every day, people are unsure about whether they will make it to the evening alive. Many people say in the morning when they say goodbye to partner and children, they're not sure they'll make it home in the evening.
The witness said many people in Afghanistan suffered post-traumatic stress disorder, but often when seeking help it was easier, especially for women, to present with physical symptoms.
They're more likely to be able to seek help for saying I have a headache or a sore stomach rather than saying I feel sad. People reported feeling difficulty concentrating, feeling danger around every corner, recurring nightmares and flashbacks.
The inquiry's public hearing will continue tomorrow. For Checkpoint, Anne-Marie May.
It's about 5:45. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Do get in touch about anything you've heard on the program today. You can text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. The family of Nicky Stevens, the young man who took his own life while in the care of the Waikato District Health Board, met with the Prime Minister today as their battle with the DHB continues. The 21-year-old was found dead in the Waikato River 3 days after he walked out of Waikato Hospital's mental health unit in 2015. His family had warned the DHB that he could take his life. A coroner ruled it was a preventable suicide, but the DHB has since questioned the ruling and wants another coroner to relook at the case. Nicky Stevens' mother, father and brother took their case to the Beehive today on behalf of theirs and other families struggling to cope with the mental health system. His mother, Jane Stevens, spoke to our reporter Andrew McRae.
In relation to the coronial process, she has said to us that, that's not something they can directly interfere with, although at the moment the issue with the DHB is not in the hands of the coronial process. It's initiated by the DHB with the Solicitor General's office. So, we are going to be seeing the new commissioner at the Waikato DHB tomorrow, and the Prime Minister was pleased that that was happening. She wants to keep in contact with us in regard to the issues that we raised, and she was very keen to hear our story and to learn from that story, and we had a good discussion around how once we can achieve some closure, then we can actually focus on being part of the solution. But that the government need to understand the horror of what is happening for families like ours, and we are just one example of many where all the processes are stacked against us, where there's no support, and we just left to try and sink or swim.
Before going into the meeting, you talked about, you felt it was the best hope to bring some sense to the situation, and you were hoping that the politics of kindness and common sense will win out. Do you feel that's happened?
I think that we have made some progress around that. Certainly talking is the first step to that, and she's made it quite clear that she wants to keep in communication with us and keep the conversation going. So, in terms of the bigger picture, if you like, I think, yes, that message got through loud and clear and was received, well. I think in terms of our immediate issues, we've still got some pain to go through to get some resolution, but I think there's much clearer understanding of what those issues are and what needs to change.
Jane Stevens, the mother of Nicky Stevens, talking to Andrew McRae. Thousands of people have taken to the streets across the US to protest restrictive new abortion laws in several states. Those behind the laws are hoping they will trigger a legal challenge and ultimately wind back the landmark 1973 Supreme Court decision, which legalised abortion throughout the country. The BBC's Caroline Rigby reports.
From Washington, D.C. to Florida.
What do? Stand up,
New York to Los Angeles, Hundreds of protesters across all 50 states joined forces to defend a woman's right to abortion. A direct response to Republican-controlled states passing tougher legislation to restrict terminations, where, in so many cases, men had the final say on the rights of women.
Went in Alabama when all of the males were voting on it, and not a single woman voted to keep it passed. It's just they're men and they don't know what women have been through. So for them to vote on passing that law, it's not right.
Earlier this month, the state of Alabama passed the most restrictive law yet, a nearly outright ban on abortions, including in cases of rape and incest. Several other states have also passed bills that outlaw abortions as soon as a heartbeat can be detected. Across the country, almost 30 states have introduced, proposed, or are currently considering some form of restriction. Addressing a rally in Washington, D.C., the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said women's rights must not be eroded.
Republican legislatures are waging a war to unravel a woman's fundamental rights. They are responsible for 300 newly proposed restrictions. We are here to send these folks a message, not on our watch.
But on this subject, the United States of America are anything but united. The Supreme Court now contains several judges appointed by Donald Trump, and many Republicans hope its conservative majority will ultimately vote against a woman's right to terminate her pregnancy anywhere in the US. That's what overturned Roe v. Wade, the landmark 1973 case which legalised abortion nationwide. A potential move the United Nations has voiced concern about.
We are calling on the United States and all other countries to ensure that women have access to safe abortions at an absolute minimum. In cases of rape, incest, and fetal anomaly, there needs to be safe access to abortions.
But although thousands turned out to fight against restrictive abortion laws, President Trump knows many of his supporters, particularly Christian evangelicals, remain strongly pro-life. And as campaigning ramps up ahead of next year's presidential election, the voices on either side of the debate will only grow louder.
Caroline Rigby reporting. Hamilton's stray cat population may be heading for the snip after a new proposal to introduce a desexing fund. Hamilton City Councillors yesterday voted to include the fund in its draft annual plan in an effort to bring numbers under control. Charities in the region say the stray cat problem is horrendous and they're struggling to keep up. Brooke Jenner reports.
Rachel Ma founded the Paws for Life charity in the Hamilton suburb of Glenview nearly 10 years ago. Since then, she's taken in over 6,000 stray cats. She says the issue's rapidly getting out of control as the stray population breeds.
It is a horrendous issue in the Hamilton region, and we've been one of the worst regions for a long, long time. It's a massive stray cat problem. So they're infiltrating the schools, the kindies, the shops, the businesses, and everybody's home.
She says the most affected communities often don't have the know-how or the finances to address the issue, so the problem keeps getting worse. And the few organisations on the streets working to reduce stray cat numbers are struggling to keep up.
We are the biggest charity in the Waikato doing cat rescue. It's a simple solution to clean up the city, but it involves a lot of hard work and takes everybody to help us out. And we're an incredibly small shelter and we have no money. We're fast running out of funds.
Ms Ma says the charitable rates for desexing a female cat is $70 and a male is around $40. And they're limited by their finances, which come from donations and adoption fees. That is until yesterday, when Hamilton City Councillors voted 7-5 to establish the region's first ever cat desexing fund. Ms Ma says with access to the cat desexing fund, an untold amount of pregnancies will be prevented. The council says the fund could see a further 1,000 cats desexed within Hamilton City boundaries each year. And the Mayor of Hamilton, Andrew King, says the fund addresses an ongoing issue for affected communities. He says 3,000 those stray cats were picked up by animal welfare organisations in the region last year. He says they were either euthanised or desexed and adopted.
It's an important issue about protecting our wildlife, our natural birds, and stops that life cycle of them breeding up to 4 times a year, 4 litters a year, which we're trying to break that cycle.
Mr King says the fund is the first of its kind in the region and believes it's among the first of its kind in the country.
These are cats that don't have an owner, and for people who have a pet in their home, that would be stepping over a line, and we shouldn't be using ratepayer money for this, but these are a menace for the whole of the public, for all the citizens of Hamilton, and that's where we've stepped in.
Mr King says public opinion on the fund had been divided, as a lot of Hamiltonians probably didn't know how bad the problem was. A local councillor, Paula Southgate, agrees. She had previously been against the idea of singling out one charity among the many asking for help, but voted for the fund after hearing how bad the issue was.
That's kind of what turned my view a little bit in the debate yesterday, was when I understood just how many stray cats we think we have in the city, the problems that they're causing, and the fact that there is no one other than these few charities helping in that area.
The Hamilton Mayor says the next step is for councillors to vote the budget into effect for rollout on the 1st of July. Mō te hōtaka o te ahi nei ko Brooke Jenner tēnei.
Japan's Prime Minister has always been known outside his country as Shinzo Abe, but now the country's Foreign Minister is asking the world to follow Japanese convention and refer to him as Abe Shinzo. The move comes ahead of a few big events in Japan, such as the G20 and the Tokyo Olympics. But before those occasions, there's another visitor booked. Donald Trump flies in this weekend. The ABC's Rachel Mealy reports.
It's long been a convention for foreign media in Japan to westernise the order of a person's name. While Prime Minister Abe is known by Japanese speakers as Abe Shinzo, when he's referred to in the foreign press, it's reversed to Shinzo Abe. US President Donald Trump has been known to mispronounce Mr Abe's name, but the two remain firm friends.
I think I can say this. Prime Minister Abe of Japan gave me the most beautiful copy of a letter.
Michael Chuchek is an adjunct professor of political science at Waseda University in Tokyo. He says conservatives within the Ministry of Education have pushed for the name change.
The Ministry of Education has decided that, gosh darn it, we are Japanese and we will do it in the Japanese style. And nobody bothers with the Chinese when they want to have family name first and personal name second.
Professor Chuchek says it points to a broader conservative philosophy within the government that wants to reassert Japanese cultures and traditions on the world stage.
They're very much on the conventions established, about 150 years ago, about the way Japan should be and the stature that Japanese should have in the world. And Japan asserting its own way of writing Japanese names is a part and parcel of that political program of assertiveness.
There have been a lot of changes in Japan lately. A new emperor ascended to the throne at the beginning of the month. It heralded the dawn of a new era named Reiwa. Rei means auspicious or good, and Wa means peace or harmony. The correction of the Prime Minister's name comes on the eve of a visit from US President Donald Trump, who'll fly to Japan this Saturday. The visit means Mr Trump receives the high honour of being the first foreign leader to greet the new emperor, and that's angered some in Japan, who point out that the US is acting against Japan's trading interests. Professor Chuchek says Mr Abe knows what he's doing.
Yeah, it is extremely honourable, and that's one of the reasons why even conservatives in this country are highly enervated by this reality. Unfortunately, they're not in charge of the government. Mr. Abe is, and Mr. Abe is the undisputed master of manipulating Trump and his vanity, that is to say, Trump's vanity, in order to extract the maximum benefit from Mr. Trump.
And that's Michael Chuchek from Waseda University ending that report from the ABC. Let's go to some of your feedback now. We've had a lot of it on our earlier interview with Paula Bennett. That was on the topic of alleged sexual assaults at Parliament and the report that was released yesterday about bullying. The Speaker of the House, Trevor Mallard, characterised those serious sexual assaults as rape, in his words. Isabel has come back to us saying such exploitative hot air from Paula Bennett. Action was taken within 24 hours of the report. That's fast. She's referencing the fact that a worker has been stood down at the moment. Paula Bennett is using this situation to attack the Speaker of the House. She doesn't care about assault, says another person who's got in contact. And this one, hi Lisa, re the bad behaviour in Parliament. What about us taxpayers having to pay the salaries of these people? No mention of us. Another one, the National Party is suffering from leadership moral bankruptcy. They support David Seymour's attack on a member of Parliament. They support a colleague who espouses accusations of Holocaust. And finally, they support a culture of silence, read their own Bridge's internal investigation of bullying. Make them accountable. The National Party has said that that report will be made public, I think it was in a couple of weeks. And this one, hi, I'm a public servant. I work in a department that has a reputation for a bullying and racist culture. So much so that we as an organisation have to pay a premium for contractors and non-uniformed staff. I applaud this government for starting with themselves as an example for airing the issue. And this person says they look forward to hearing how Jacinda Ardern will lead on this.
RNZ News at 6. Ngā mihi nui ko Susana Leatawa tēnei. A parliamentary service staffer has been stood down following an allegation of sexual assault some years ago. The alleged incident had previously been investigated and the parliamentary service reopened it today after the woman came forward. The Speaker, Trevor Mallard, says the woman came forward following his interview with RNZ today, in which he said he believed there was a rapist on the premises. Parliamentary service says the original investigation was not into allegations of rape. Mr Mallard says he understands the allegations were all about the man who has now been stood down, but police are not yet involved.
It is not my role to refer it to the police. It is the role of the woman involved. It is part of the ethics of New Zealand that you don't refer these matters to the police unless the individual wants to.
The Speaker, Trevor Mallard. The journalist Nikki Hager has asked the Operation Burnham inquiry to get from the Defence Force the names of all those it knows were killed or wounded in a New Zealand-led raid in Afghanistan in 2010. The inquiry is investigating allegations that 6 civilians were killed in the raid and the military covered up what happened. Mr Hager made a presentation at the inquiry's public hearing in Wellington today, saying the book Hit and Run, which he wrote with John Stevenson, made it clear the civilian casualties were accidental, but he said regardless of that, there were 3 things the SAS were responsible for in the raid: any carelessness in the orders given to attack aircraft, not going back to give medical aid, and Defence hiding and denying what it had done. The Christchurch City Council is defending a central city building with an earthquake design that's alarmed some engineers. The future of the unoccupied 7-storey office block remains unclear, but the council says there is no immediate risk to the public. Katie Todd reports.
3 engineering reviews have identified weaknesses in the piles, the frame, a column and the foundations at 230 High Street. But the council says 2 chartered professional engineers reviewed the design before it was given consent. It says the building is no different to a number of structures in the city which do not meet building code compliance levels due to their age or construction. And it does not see any risk or that the block is even dangerous in the normal course of events. The council explained a 9-month gap between it being warned in late 2017 and getting its own engineering review back to ongoing debates between engineers. In Christchurch, ko Katie Todd, tēnei.
Auckland's Aotea Centre is the latest building to face delays and cost overruns to replace potentially flammable cladding. The Auckland Council says the centre's refurbishment will cost an extra $14 million and be delayed by a year as builders replace cladding midway through the project. The cladding was changed as a result of new regulations brought in after the London's Grenfell Tower fire. Auckland's Mayor Phil Goff says the extra work and time to replace the cladding is necessary.
We have an absolute obligation to ensure that our public buildings are safe, and the work has to be done.
Sky City is also replacing cladding at the International Convention Centre being built in Auckland. The Retirement Commissioner, Diane Maxwell, has been cleared of allegations of bullying. The Commerce and Consumer Affairs Minister Christopher Foy received 2 anonymous written complaints late last year alleging bullying by Ms Maxwell. The State Services Commission then ordered an investigation. Sarah Robson has more.
The investigation by Maria Dew QC interviewed 24 former and current Retirement Commission staff. Ms Dew concluded that Ms Maxwell has not bullied current or former staff. However, the investigation has highlighted concerns about Ms Maxwell's communication style, which some employees found too abrasive and challenging. Ms Dew says when Ms Maxwell was informed of this, she appeared reluctant to accept that as a genuine concern. Ms Maxwell will return to work and see out her term as Retirement Commissioner, which ends next month. Ko Sarah Robson, aho.
The police have charged a man with murder after a man was shot dead in South Auckland last week. Fa'aifo Siausi, also known as Joe, died on Piako Street in Otara last Friday afternoon. The police say a 21-year-old man has been charged with murder and will appear in the Manukau District Court tomorrow. A second 21-year-old male faces a firearms charge and has already appeared in court. It's coming up to 5 minutes past 6. There's nothing riding on the last round-robin match of the Netball Premiership, but both the Southern Steel and Northern Stars still have plenty to play for in Invercargill tonight. The winner will get a confidence boost ahead of the elimination final next week, when the two sides will meet again to decide who will play the pulse in the final. The players will also have the chance to make one final impression on the Silver Fern selectors, who are in Invercargill to announce tomorrow the New Zealand squad for July's World Cup in Liverpool. The All Blacks flanker Sam Cane is back in the Chiefs starting lineup for their match against the Queensland Reds in Hamilton on Saturday night. Cane returned to the field 7 months after breaking his neck when he came off the bench in the Chiefs' loss to the Blues last weekend. The Chiefs, though, are still without injured All Black lock Brodie Retallick. The Toronto Raptors have levelled their NBA basketball Eastern Conference Series final at 2 games all after a 120-102 win in Game 4. The winner of the best of 7 series will play the Golden State Warriors in the NBA Finals. And Sir Ian Botham has warned Australian duo Steve Smith and David Warner to brace themselves for plenty of abuse from England cricket fans during the World Cup, which starts next week. The legendary England all-rounder says he has no sympathy for Smith and Warner following their suspension for ball tampering. He says the Barmy Army's already compiled 8 or 9 songs for the World Cup, and Warner features in most of them. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, we continue to celebrate the launch of our new children's website, storytime.rnz, with a bedtime fable read by Lloyd Scott. We begin a new series marking the 50th anniversary of the moon landings, and if you still don't believe us, there's always a sofa session with Arjuna Oakes.
You talk way too much to even know.
That's Nights from after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. Northland to Waitomo, including Taupo and Bay of Plenty. Cloudy periods and a few light showers in the western areas. Showers clearing tomorrow and fine spells increasing. Taranaki to Kapiti Coast, including Taihape and Taumaranui. Patchy drizzle clearing south of Whanganui today. Mostly cloudy tomorrow and a few showers developing. For Gisborne, Hawke's Bay, Wairarapa, Wellington, Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury. Fine weather, apart from a possible shower or two in the Taradua district tomorrow. Bulla, cloud increasing and showers developing tonight, clearing by tomorrow morning. Westland, often cloudy with a few showers turning to rain, then clearing tonight. Fiordland, cloudy with showers mainly in the west and south. Otago and Southland, occasional showers in Southland and Clutha, mainly about the south coast, cloudy periods elsewhere. Chatham Islands, fine spells and a few showers. RNZ National with Indira Stewart is back with First Up from 5 a.m. tomorrow. It's coming up to 8 minutes past 6.
Thanks, Susanna. This is Checkpoint and I'm Lisa Owen. Little more than 24 hours after a damning report was released into Parliament's workplace culture, a parliamentary staffer has been stood down after another staffer laid a formal complaint of sexual assault. The Speaker, Trevor Mallard, this morning said he believed 3 cases of extremely serious sexual assaults cited in yesterday's report into Parliament's workplace culture were rape. That prompted National's Deputy Leader, Paula Bennett, to say that Parliament wasn't a safe place. Then, this afternoon, Trevor Mallard made an announcement to reporters at Parliament.
A member of the Parliamentary Service staff has been stood down following a historic allegation of assault. I don't want to cut across any employment or possible police investigations, but I am satisfied that the Parliamentary Service has removed a threat to the safety of women working in the parliamentary complex. I want to thank the staff member who has come forward and say that this is obviously a very traumatic time for that individual, and will also be the case for other individuals, other women who are involved. I want to encourage anyone who has been assaulted to contact the Safe to Talk hotline, 0800 044 334, the police or the General Manager of the Parliamentary Service. Because the matter is now under investigation as opposed to being part of a review, it's not appropriate to go into further details, and my appeal to the media is to let the process run and take care not to further traumatise either this woman or other women.
That's Parliament Speaker Trevor Mallard. May Chen is the managing partner of Chen Palmer. One of her areas of expertise is employment law, especially for state sector employers, and she joins me now. Good evening, May.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi. In light of the revelations from this report yesterday, what responsibility is on employers within Parliament to ensure that there is a safe workplace there?
Well, I think it's a good sign that the report was actually undertaken by somebody independent. Certainly, if you were to give this report to WorkSafe, they should exercise their discretion to make sure that they're inspecting that workplace. I mean, I think it's great that a person has been stood down today, but I don't think one person is going to do it. I think it is important, though, for the staff, because what it does is it creates trust in them that something will be done if they say something. I note that in the report a lot of people said, well, these things were going on and they were terrible, but we just didn't think that anything would happen if we said anything. So, I've looked at the recommendations, and there are lots of them, Lisa, but in terms of ensuring that that culture and that workplace changes, the most important thing is that there are ramifications for people who are behaving badly.
And if nothing happens to those people, as you say, only one person's been stood down. There is a raft of behaviour outlined in that report. Some of it, sexual assaults, others of it are bullying, inappropriate behaviour, yelling and screaming at staff, intimidating people. How can you employ someone today? If you were going to employ someone in that environment, how could you guarantee to them that you're going to be safe in this environment?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is that there is some irony here. We're talking about parliamentary services and we're talking about MPs. They're members of Parliament. These are the people who are our lawmaking branch. They're the ones who passed the Health and Safety at Work Act 2015 after Pike River. They said that, look, tut, this really wasn't good enough, and that those responsible couldn't just sit back and say, well, look, we don't know anything about this, it's not up to us. They had to be proactive in creating a safe and healthy workspace for their staff, not just physically but also mentally. So I think a lot more needs to be done. Look, there's culture change that's needed, total culture change. And look, it started today, you can see. It actually started prior to this. The fact that there's an independent review is always a good first step, and it's certainly what I would have recommended in this case. When you've got systemic problems of this nature, you need somebody else coming in from outside to really tell you how it is. And the picture is pretty bad. It's so bad that really now I would have thought that WorkSafe would be pretty interested in exercising its discretion to come and have a look and ensure that those officers and those people with obligations under that statute, the Health and Safety at Work Act, passed by many who are currently in this Parliament, is actually being complied with. They have obligations, statutory duties, just along with every other employer out there.
So they're
potentially to comply with the law.
Sorry, May, but they're potentially vulnerable to prosecution here then, is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. I thought it was so lovely to read little quotes from people about how Parliament is so unique. I'm sorry, mining is unique too. Those who were down the Pike River mine and died were also in a unique workplace. At the end of the day, it is just a workplace. And look, I've no doubt that it's crisis conditions, and sometimes it may feel you're on a war footing. But at the end of the day, the Health and Safety at Work Act doesn't say that if you're in Parliament, you're in a special place and the law doesn't apply. It equally applies here. So I'm very surprised that, I'm sure WorkSafe will have something to say about this. They have inspectors. There are clearly systemic issues here. And look, there are lots of
has WorkSafe failed in some respect already, given that we're only just hearing about this stuff? And this report looked at a period of over 5 years. So has nobody been looking in their backyard and keeping an eye on them?
Well, there were work inspectors prior to this new piece of legislation coming in 2015. And look, I don't know whether WorkSafe has been in to investigate. All I'm saying is this, that I'm advising a range of parties at the moment. And if this was a private sector company, if this was a report, Lisa, about a private sector company and the goings-on in there, let me tell you, there should be a notification. If the staff were really worried, they could have made protected disclosures under the Protected Disclosure Act. WorkSafe should be going in and they should be asking questions about what is going on in this organisation, and most importantly, what are those with statutory duties doing to ensure that the staff are safe?
I want to just ask you about this issue of whether there is an obligation to report to the police. If there is potentially illegal behaviour which has come to your attention, what obligation, and a potential for other people to be injured or hurt as a consequence of what you know, is there an obligation to disclose that to the police?
Well, I think there's been debate and discussion about this. It has to do with the basis on which the information was provided, I think. But look, clearly there are issues of a criminal nature that have been raised, and certainly the report itself can be referred to police. But I think it's been...
Should it be, in your view?
Well, I would have thought that was pretty simple, really. You just give the report to the police. They will, of course, say, well, thanks, we've got the report, but it's up to the individuals to complain. But, they could undertake an investigation also. So, look, I don't think this is the end. I think it's the start. Got on the speaker for getting an independent review. Clearly it was needed. But it's long overdue. The reality is that this is the branch of government that passes laws. And in this country, we have very high standards with respect to health and safety. We say to those in charge, it is not enough to be reactive. You have to be proactive and making sure that your staff are not only physically safe, but also mentally well. And can I say that I think that this requires a change in culture, not just for the staff, but it actually does say something about the nature of our politics. If you were saying that MPs can't be better people because the nature of the job requires them to work 24/7 and they become raging bullies, then we need to change the nature of their roles as well. There needs to be a fundamental shift because this is not sustainable. We can't have this going on in our most important institution, you know.
Appreciate your time this evening. That's May Chen, who is a managing partner in Chen Palmer, speaking there on that report, which has showed widespread, bullying and problems within the parliamentary work culture. The NZ Transport Agency says it hopes to start work early next year on the long-awaited shared cycle and walkway across Auckland's Harbour Bridge. Today, it unveiled the new design, which will cost $32 million more than what was budgeted. And it's not yet clear whether the government will come to the party. The New Zealand Transport Agency was also cleared of any wrongdoing in its relationship with Skypath Trust, which has done years of design and resource consent work and says it's still out of pocket. Reporter Jordan Bond sat down with the agency spokesperson, Brett Glidden, and asked him what's different about the new, more expensive design.
It's up at deck level rather than up underneath the bridge. It has much better fire life ability if there's an issue on the walking and cycling path, because we can access it from the bridge deck itself rather than up underneath. It's not connected to the clip-on, so it won't move up and down as much as it would on the clip-on. The clip-ons move up to 700 mils when heavy vehicles travel over it. So there's a lot of benefits to the option that we've got. So we're quite proud of it and think it's a really good enduring option.
You say it can be built up to 5 metres?
Yeah.
Will it be built?
Yeah, we're saying 5 metres. It could even be wider, but the intent is to build 5 metres. That's best practice. When we build walking and cycling paths now anywhere around the city, we sort of aim for 5 metres. That allows enough room for cyclists and pedestrians to mix, because you've obviously got a speed differential. So 5 metres gives plenty of width so that you can have both people on the path at any one time.
Mm-hmm. And so when Minister Twyford and Shaw and Mayor Gough stood in Northcote last year and said the government was going to fully fund the Skypath design, what did you take that to mean?
Look, we've always said that we were going to do an option analysis, which is what we've done, because this is about walking and cycling over the Auckland Harbour Bridge, and so we've come up with an option that we believe will deliver walking and cycling across the Auckland Harbour Bridge, and we're really proud of it.
And so this still has funding through the National Land Transport Fund?
That's right. So in the National Land Transport, there's allocated funding for walking and cycling over the Harbour Bridge, and so this project will sit within that.
And it will meet that same cost, 67 million-ish?
No, look, when it comes to the cost, this is 100 million plus, but we've never seen the detailed costings of the Skypath Trust options, so I can't comment on how they've built that cost up. I can just tell you that the Auckland Harbour Bridge is a very complex structure, and it was never going to be easy attaching anything to the Auckland Harbour Bridge, so I can't comment on how robust their number is, but we're pretty confident around the number we've got and the solution we've developed.
But that 67 million was accepted. It was quoted by at least one of the ministers, and it was put in the press release from the Beehive.
Yep.
So this will cost at least 30% more?
Like I said, we have never looked at the detailed makeup of that costing, so I just can't comment on that.
Okay, but are you disputing that it could have costed that much?
No, I'm simply just saying we haven't looked at it, so we haven't been able to see how robust it is. Okay. But we've got confidence in our number because we've developed our option based on that and used our standard processes.
Sure. So when the government said we will fund Skypath, though, that was subject to a decision by NZTA for the best possible option? Yeah,
look, I think it's really important that you note here that the Auckland Harbour Bridge is a very important asset to New Zealand. It's probably our most strategic asset. It takes a lot of traffic, a lot of services. It's really important that we protect that asset. We can't make that asset vulnerable in any way. So we have to take that into account no matter what we do. So we've been committed to walking and cycling, but we've got to have an option that we see is enduring and ensures that we maintain the integrity of the Auckland Harbour Bridge, and that's what we believe we've delivered with this option.
Did NZTA treat the Skypath Trust fairly and in good faith?
Look, we've had the independent report and it said that we acted in good faith, so I think that people can read that for themselves.
Do you believe NZTA treated Skypath Trust?
Yeah, look, we've had an independent report that said we acted in good faith, so I think that's there for everyone to read.
That's though Simpson Grierson's view. Do you believe that?
Yes.
Now, Auckland Council funded Skypath's resource consent around $2 million worth, I believe. Given you say some of that might be able to be utilised, is Auckland Council going to be out of pocket here?
Look, we haven't had any relationship around the commercial arrangements between Skypath Trust and their consultants or Skypath Trust and Auckland Council. We'll have to have a conversation with Auckland Council about that, but we haven't had any visibility of the existing arrangements.
And given it is quite a different design, do you foresee being able to or a willingness to work with Skypath Trust at all in the future?
Absolutely, and we've put an olive leaf out there to say that we're happy to work with Skypath Trust, and we want to rebuild that relationship, because at the end of the day we want the same thing. We want walking and cycling across the Auckland Harbour Bridge. There's lots of options around how you do that. We think we've developed an option that's really enduring and is going to deliver great benefits. It delivers the same ultimate outcome, which is so people can walk and cycle across the bridge.
Brett Glidden speaking there with Jordan Bond. It is 22 minutes past 6. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. UK Prime Minister Theresa May has again made the case for her new Brexit plan in Parliament. Amid signs that Conservative opposition to her leadership is hardening, it's become a painful ritual in a torturous process in which Mrs May unveils a vision for Brexit and then MPs line up to demolish it in the House of Commons. The BBC's political editor Laura Koonsberg has more from Westminster.
Win or lose when her plan comes to a vote, and soon, few in this audience believe it's anything other than her last shot.
The majority of MPs say they want to deliver the result of the referendum. So I think we need to help them find a way. And I believe there is now one last chance to do that. And today I'm making a serious offer to MPs across Parliament, a new Brexit deal.
Newly packaged up together, but familiar promises. Extra protection for workers' rights and the environment. Giving MPs the say on the fraught issue of customs. And acknowledging many of them want a chance at least to vote on another referendum.
I do not believe this is a route that we should take, but I recognise the genuine and sincere strength of feeling across the House on this important issue. The Government will therefore include in the Withdrawal Agreement Bill at introduction a requirement to vote on whether to hold a second referendum.
You've had nearly 3 years, but the opposition parties have already said they will not vote for this deal. Isn't it simply too late now for you to be offering a compromise, and many MPs simply don't want to listen?
Wait and look at the details of the bill and think about the importance of delivering Brexit, because this is the way that we can ratify an agreement and ensure that we leave the European Union.
Theresa May's last efforts to win over Parliament create a parallel universe to what's playing out around the country. The European elections in a matter of days, only happening because the government's failed. Tories and Labour both jangling with nerves as smaller parties, pushing clarity not compromise, stand to gain.
Squish up, you lot!
Voters will give a verdict with Parliament's meltdown the backdrop. Labour won't give number 10 a way out.
We can't support this bill because it's basically a rehash of what was discussed before, and it doesn't make any fundamental moves on market alignment or the customs union, or indeed protection of rights.
The vote is still more than a week away. The Prime Minister won't give up, and minds could still change. But rejection of this bundle of new measures may already have taken root.
Laura Koonsberg there from Westminster. The popularity of craft brewing in this part of the world has seen an explosion of innovative beer makers challenging established brands. But in Europe, it's a case of everything old is new again, with the Grimbergen monks of Belgium resuming their beer brewing habits after a 220-year hiatus. The ABC's Nick Grimm has the story.
It's been a long time between drinks for the monks of Grimbergen Abbey. The monastery got into the business of brewing back in 1128 and kept it up when war and misadventure saw the abbey destroyed and rebuilt over the centuries. But eventually, in 1798, invading French soldiers razed the abbey once again, and while the building itself was restored, it had quenched the thirst of the monks for making their own beer. Until now, that is. Karel Stotemus is the sub-prior of Grimbergen Abbey and one of the monks retraining in the art of brewing.
For us it's important to have good look to the heritage, to the tradition of the fathers for brewing beer, because it was always here, brewing and religion life, it was always come together. And so that was the start of a dream to bring back the Grimbergen in a little part here in the microbrewery.
Aficionados of the amber fluid will know the Grimbergen beer has lived on as a label licensed by outside brewing companies. But that was a product created in the 1950s by marketing executives to meet the modern taste for beers with a traditional flavour. But the authentic Grimbergen Abbey product will be made with the help of the original recipe, long thought lost but since rediscovered in the monastery's archives. Marc-Antoine Saujon is the Abbey's newly appointed head brewer.
So what will be special about the beer? We will keep our Grimbergen DNA, which is a yeast, and we will also use some local ingredients. For example, we are start to grow hops in the garden of the Abbey.
First drinks are still a little way off for the Abbey's beer. The initial rollout of kegs won't get tapped until late next year. And when it comes to the beer not drunk within the monastery's stone surrounds, well, the good burghers of Grimbergen are sensing a golden opportunity to promote their province, which lies just north of Brussels. Marcella Linker is Grimbergen's global marketing manager.
So for us, I think this project is extremely exciting because Grimbergen is the brand that has so much heritage, and we want to continue building on this heritage and really the brewing expertise.
The Abbey bears the symbol of the phoenix, accompanied by the Latin motto meaning burned but not destroyed. After more than 2 centuries, the monastery's beer might have been a long time rising from the ashes, but the monks are counting on a heady future for the brew. Royalties from the operation will go towards maintaining the monastery and providing for its monks, along with, it's promised, helping weary travellers who knock at its door in need of help.
And just enough time for some of your feedback before we go. Again, you've been getting in touch regarding the report into bullying at Parliament and our interview with Paula Bennett. This person says Paula Bennett is really just trying to make political capital from a serious situation. It is sickening. I think Trevor Mallard handled this appropriately. She is pretty selective about sexual assaults, this person says, and surely any sexual assault is wrong and also illegal. That was from Andrew, who got in touch. But Carol, we'll give the last word to Carol tonight. She has texted in to say, well, Lisa, it is noticeable how you only read out texts and emails slanted towards your own very obvious political leanings. Should you not be reporting on all views of the general public? Thanks for your feedback, Carol. Just want to let you know I don't select the feedback. In fact, one of the producers, that's their job. So I read the feedback that they give me. You can check out all our stories online, and I really suggest you go and look at our Alex Perrottet's story. There should be a prize for best reporter interaction with passing joggers. That's on the Sky Path. And have a great evening. We will be back tomorrow. Catch you then.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30, I beg your pardon. An investigation into historical sexual assault by a Parliamentary service staffer has reopened and the man has been stood down. Journalist Nikki Hager has accused the Defence Force of not telling the full truth about its Afghanistan and Iraq operations. Christchurch quake survivor Anne Brower says weaknesses identified by engineers in a new High Street block call into question the council's procedures for looking at new builds. And a 21-year-old man will appear in the Manukau District Court tomorrow, charged with murder after a shooting death in South Auckland last Friday. Those are the headlines. Our next news and weather will be at 7.
One of the most interesting things about being a New Zealand jazz musician is figuring out your place in the world. Tonight on Inside Out, we'll hear tracks from Harry Harrison, Jasmine Lovell-Smith,